For the last 4 months, I'd been surviving on little more than caffeine and pure willpower, long nights, crack of dawn mornings, and weekends sacrificed to endless spreadsheets instead of time with friends, all because of one massive project. This was the kind of account that could change the entire course of my career if I pulled it off. And finally, I had crossed the finish line. The client was over the moon. My presentation couldn't have gone any smoother, and we sealed the deal. But honestly, the real thrill came with the reward. I found myself sitting at my desk, rereading the email for what had to be the 10th time. Evelyn, you went above and beyond. Consider these a personal thank you. Enjoy the game. Attached was proof. 2 front-row Super Bowl tickets, 40-yard line. The works my heart was pounding. I'd never been to a Super Bowl before, and as someone who's loved football all my life, it felt unreal. My hands were actually trembling as I printed out the email, double-checking every single detail. The tickets had been sent straight to my boss, Robert Fowler, who was a senior partner at my firm. That made sense. He usually managed any client gifts in my mind. I pictured him coming into my office, giving me one of those rare approving smiles, and handing over the tickets with a proud, well-earned Evelyn. But that moment never happened. Instead, 3 days later, Robert barged into my office without so much as a knock, looking even more self-important than usual. He leaned casually against my desk, acting like he owned the place, like even the air belonged to him. "Heard you got some good news," he said. I smiled, thinking he was finally going to hand me the tickets. "Yeah, I really appreciate it. I put everything into that project." He nodded, a little smirk playing on his lips. "You did, which is exactly why I wanted to discuss the tickets with you." Something in his tone made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Right," I answered, careful not to let my nerves show. Robert let out a sigh, trying to play the part of the reasonable boss. "Here's the thing, Evelyn. Sometimes clients don't quite get how things work inside a company. They don't see the bigger picture. So when they gave you those tickets, that was more of a gift for the firm, not just for you." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "No," I said slowly, determined to stay calm. The email was clear. It said they were a personal thank you for me. He dismissed that with a flick of his hand, like it was just a minor oversight. "I understand, but in our world, it's all about building relationships. And every so often, you have to make strategic choices. So, I'll be taking the tickets." It felt like the world suddenly spun the wrong way. I just stared at him. "Excuse me?" "I've already made arrangements. I'm bringing a potential investor to the game. It's a smart move for the company." My heart was pounding in my chest. It just didn't seem possible. After all those months of grinding and giving up everything, he was just taking what I'd earned? "That's not fair," I managed, keeping my voice as even as I could, even though I wanted to scream, "The client gave them to me." Robert gave me a condescending little grin, like I was some clueless kid who hadn't learned how the world worked. "You should be grateful you have a job," he said smoothly. "That's your real reward." I swallowed, my hands gripping the arms of my chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. At this point, it wasn't just about missing the game. It was about being respected, about a basic sense of decency that he was trampling on. He patted my desk like I was a dog that had learned a trick. "I'm sure you understand. And don't worry, there will be plenty of other chances." I made myself breathe. I forced myself not to react, not to lose control. And then, without even thinking, I smiled. Not a genuine one. This was the kind of smile that hides its bite. "Well," I said, making my voice perfectly smooth, "have fun at the game." He flashed a self-satisfied grin and strutted out like he'd just done something generous. He had no idea what was coming on Monday. The plan. The second Robert left my office, the fake smile disappeared from my face. My hands balled into fists under the desk, my nails pressing deep into my palms. He really believed he could just get away with this. I sat there for a long moment, forcing myself to breathe slowly, refusing to react on emotion alone. If I wanted to win, I'd have to outthink him. And the best part? Robert had practically handed me everything I needed. I opened the client's email again, reading every word carefully as an idea started to take shape. Getting back at Robert wouldn't mean confronting him head-on. That would just backfire. The smarter move was to let him hang himself. So, I fired off a quick text to my client. "Hey, just wanted to thank you again for the Super Bowl tickets. Turns out they were given to someone else here. Hope to catch up soon." It took less than a minute for my phone to buzz. "Are you serious? Who took them?" I grinned to myself. This was getting interesting. I played it innocent. Honestly, I don't know. I just know I never got them. Not a big deal, though. "Not a big deal? Those were for you. I'll take care of this. Don't say a word." Jackpot. I leaned back in my chair, adrenaline still racing, but now it was from anticipation. This wasn't a fight between me and Robert anymore. Now it was Robert versus the client. And I already knew which side would come out on top. I spent the rest of the day keeping my ears open, quietly gathering more information. I knew Robert couldn't help himself. He'd have to brag to someone about his big win. And just as I expected, around lunchtime, I caught him in the break room. Yeah, 40-yard line seats. It's going to be incredible. I'm bringing a major prospect. You know how it goes. These deals are all about who you know. I stayed hidden, barely able to keep from laughing at his arrogance and his stupidity. By Friday, you could feel the tension in the office. Robert was leaving early, flying out that afternoon for the Super Bowl. He strutted around like he was untouchable. When I saw him in the hallway, I couldn't resist. "Got big plans this weekend?" I asked, keeping it casual. He just smirked. "Oh, making things happen." "Enjoy the game," I said, and I meant it, because by the time he landed, everything would already be set in motion. Saturday morning, my client sent me a message. "I've arranged a meeting for Monday. Just go along with it." "Trust me." I shot him a grin. Oh, I trusted him all right. Maybe more than I ever had. The showdown Sunday came and went, and so did the Super Bowl. I didn't catch a single minute of it, not because my love for football had faded, but because I was waiting for something far better. Monday was the real event I'd been looking forward to. Robert strutted into the office at exactly 9:07 a.m., sunglasses still on, coffee in hand, looking like a man who believed he'd just scored the winning touchdown. He barely glanced my way as he passed my desk, making a beeline for his office. I didn't move until I saw the meeting invitation pop up on my screen at 9:30. Client review, mandatory attendance. The location was Conference Room A. The guest list included all the senior partners, Robert himself, a client representative, and, of course, me. I clicked accept. Showtime. Stepping into that glass-walled conference room, I could feel the air practically vibrating with tension. Robert sat at the head of the table, looking way too relaxed, legs crossed, exuding false confidence. But the second the client entered, flanked by a woman I'd never seen before, his composure slipped just a little. The client took his seat and made introductions. "Robert, this is Andrea Holloway, VP of Corporate Partnerships." Andrea sat down, giving Robert a brisk nod that held zero warmth. Robert blinked, fumbling for words. "Oh, of course. Andrea, pleasure to meet you." The client's smile was all business, cool and razor-sharp. "Before we get to the agenda, I have a question. Evelyn, did you enjoy the game?" The room froze. I tilted my head slightly, playing innocent. "The game," he clarified. "The Super Bowl." I gave him a puzzled look. "I didn't go." His face darkened. "That's odd, because I arranged for you to have 2 seats. Isn't that right, Robert?" For a split second, panic flickered in Robert's eyes before he forced a laugh. Oh well, there was a bit of a misunderstanding. Evelyn couldn't make it, so the client didn't let him finish. So who ended up using the tickets? Robert shifted in his chair, obviously flustered. I took a client. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. Andrea jumped in, her tone crisp. Robert, let me get this straight. Are you saying you took company tickets intended as an employee reward and gave them to someone else without any authorization? Robert swallowed, struggling to find his voice. But the client wasn't done. You know, I was really looking forward to seeing Evelyn at that game. It seemed like the perfect reward for months of hard work. Imagine my shock when I found out she never even saw those tickets. Robert opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He was floundering. Andrea turned to me, her gaze steady. Evelyn, did Robert ever mention any company policy requiring you to hand over those tickets? I shook my head, keeping my voice even and calm. No, he didn't. He just told me the tickets belonged to him now. Tension crackled through the room. Andrea let out a sharp sigh. Robert, you do understand that not only did you breach internal ethics, but this is essentially corporate theft, correct? Robert's face drained of color. The client leaned back in his chair, disappointment plain on his face. Honestly, I don't think I can keep working with someone willing to throw his own team under the bus for personal gain. Robert shot upright in his chair, desperate. Wait, let's just... But the client turned to Andrea instead. I trust you'll take it from here? Andrea nodded, her face unreadable. Effective immediately. Robert knew what that meant. He wasn't just in trouble, he was finished. And me? I just sat back, perfectly calm, and soaked it all in. The false silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as Robert sat there, completely mute. That smug arrogance he always wore was gone, replaced by a deep, blotchy red spreading across his face. Andrea, the VP, leaned in, folding her hands on the table, her voice steady but edged with steel. Robert, are you aware of what this looks like? He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. He knew exactly how it looked. The client shook his head, visibly frustrated. It's not just about the tickets, Robert. It's about trust. It's about professionalism. It's about knowing the people I work with aren't going to undermine their own employees for a quick win. Robert's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming nervously against the polished table. He glanced around, but none of the senior partners were going to save him now. They were all staring anywhere but at him, not wanting to get dragged into his mess. I kept my hands folded in my lap, my expression neutral. I didn't need to gloat. The silence did all the work. Finally, Andrea broke the spell. Robert, did you expense any part of this trip? He blinked, lost. I'm sorry? She tilted her head, her gaze piercing. Did you charge the airfare, hotel, meals, transportation, anything, to the firm's account? Just watching the panic flicker in his eyes was answer enough. The client gave a low chuckle, though there was no amusement behind it. So you used company money to take someone to the Super Bowl, using the tickets that should have gone to Evelyn? Robert tried to gather himself, sitting up straighter, forcing a weak smile. Look, I realize how this looks, but I was only thinking about the company. I wanted to strengthen a valuable investor relationship. The client's patience snapped. Which investor? Robert blinked again. Sorry? The client leaned back, arms folded, calling his bluff. Who exactly did you take to the game? Robert's mouth worked soundlessly. He had nothing. Andrea tapped her fingers, unwavering. Robert, answer the question. He hesitated, scrambling for anything that might sound believable, but we all knew the truth. There was no investor. Robert hadn't taken anyone important to the business. He brought his brother-in-law, a man with zero corporate ties, and not a single deal to his name, just so he could enjoy the best seats in the house and a weekend of overpriced beer. And Robert had charged every expense to the company. Watching his face, I saw the reality land on him. There was no way out. The client just shook his head, incredulous. Unbelievable. He turned to Andrea. I want it on record that my company will no longer do business with Robert Fowler from this point on. Robert's head snapped up so fast I thought he might hurt himself. Wait, you can't just— You can't. But the client wasn't interested in anything Robert had to say. He pressed on, calm and steady. If you'd like to assign a different senior partner to my account, I'm willing to talk it through. He looked straight at me. Honestly, I'd prefer if Evelyn handled things personally from now on. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was practically bursting with satisfaction. Andrea nodded. All business. Understood. She tapped out a few quick notes on her tablet. Robert, we'll take things from here. I recommend you take the rest of the week off while we conduct our internal review. Robert turned white as a sheet. He opened his mouth to argue, but then he caught sight of Andrea's face, the client's face, everyone else in the room. He realized it was over. He shot up from his seat, the chair scraping loudly across the floor, and stormed out without another word. The glass doors slammed shut behind him, leaving the conference room in a thick, uncomfortable silence. Finally, the client turned to me, his expression softening. Evelyn, I owe you an apology. I should have made sure those tickets reached you personally. I shook my head. There's no way you could have known. And honestly, I glanced at the doors Robert had just marched through. This actually worked out for the best. He let out a low chuckle. I like how you think. Andrea smiled and slid a document across the table toward me. Evelyn, you've been the backbone of this account. I'd like to officially offer you a promotion. I felt my breath catch. Was this real? I looked down at the paper. There it was. A substantial salary bump, more authority, a title that put me shoulder to shoulder with the same people who'd dismissed me for years. I looked up, meeting Andrea's eyes. Are you serious? Her smile only widened. Absolutely. You've more than earned it. A smile broke across my face, slow and unstoppable. Then yes, I accept. The client stood up, offering his hand. Glad to hear it. And Evelyn? Yes? Next time I have Super Bowl tickets to give out, they'll be sent straight to you. No middlemen. I laughed, shaking his hand. Robert thought he'd robbed me of a reward, but in reality, he handed me exactly what I'd always wanted. And the best part? The day was just getting started. The aftermath. By the time I made it back to my desk, the entire office was practically vibrating with gossip. People kept glancing at me, then over at Robert's now empty office, their voices low and hurried. In this place, news like that spread faster than wildfire. When a senior partner storms out looking like he's seen a ghost, you'd better believe everyone takes notice. I slid into my chair, trying to stifle the grin tugging at my lips. My inbox exploded, emails and messages piling up from every corner of the company. Some were congratulations, others words of support, and a few were just shocked. Wait, what happened? From coworkers who had only caught whispers of the drama. Then a text popped up on my phone. Robert Fowler. What the hell did you do? I stared at it for a second, then typed back. Me? Not sure what you mean. I thought you were making moves. I waited. Nothing. Of course. I let out a long breath and glanced down at the promotion letter on my desk, signed and sealed. I'd won. But I also knew Robert wasn't done. Not yet. Robert's last move. Barely an hour had passed before I got another email, subject line screaming at me in bold. HR meeting. Immediate attendance. Required. I opened it. Evelyn, please report to HR immediately. This is a mandatory meeting. My eyes narrowed. Of course, Robert wasn't going to slink away quietly. I grabbed my notebook and walked to the HR office. The receptionist barely glanced at me, just waved me toward a glass-walled conference room in the back. Inside, Denise from HR sat looking uncomfortable. Across from her sat Robert. He wasn't smug anymore. Now he looked like an animal caught in a trap, desperate and dangerous. Denise cleared her throat. Evelyn, come in and take a seat. I sat down. Robert leaned forward, putting on a show of false concern. Evelyn, I really didn't want it to come to this, but I have to raise a very serious issue. I raised an eyebrow, calm. Which is? He sighed heavily, clearly enjoying the drama. The firm's been reviewing some of your recent communications, and there's reason to believe you broke confidentiality by sharing internal business information with an external client. I blinked at him. So this was his last-ditch effort. Denise glanced from me to Robert, clearly uncomfortable. Robert brought this up first thing this morning, she said quietly. No surprise there. He was scrambling for anything that might save his reputation. I tilted my head, unfazed. And what confidential information do you believe I disclosed? Robert laced his fingers together. The emails you sent about the Super Bowl tickets. That was an internal issue, and you discussed it with the client. I let out a soft, incredulous laugh. So you're saying a gift intended specifically for me, which you took, somehow counts as confidential business. Denise flinched at the word took. Robert's jaw flexed. I wouldn't call it stealing. I cut in, sharp. Really? Because the client called it theft, in front of everyone. Silence hung heavy. I leaned back in my chair, cool as ice. This isn't about confidentiality. This is about you getting caught. And now you're throwing a tantrum because you finally faced the consequences. Denise took a careful breath. Robert, I appreciate your concern, but after reviewing everything, there's no evidence that Evelyn violated any company policy. Robert whipped his head toward her. What? She looked down at her notes, voice steady. The client was the one who sent the gift. He had every right to ask about it. Evelyn never shared company strategy, financials, or any trade secrets. She only discussed the status of something that belonged to her. Robert's face went from red to nearly purple. So that's it? You're just going to let her get away with... Denise straightened, her own patience wearing thin. Let's be perfectly clear, Robert. You're the one under investigation here, not Evelyn. They're reviewing your expense reports. The client's already cut ties with you. And now, after all that, you're trying to go after the one employee who just got promoted for actually doing the work. Robert was completely out of ammo. No words, no clever comeback, nothing left in his arsenal. He'd lost. Denise sighed, getting to her feet. Robert, I need you to leave the room. Evelyn, you're free to go. I quietly gathered my things, not bothering to glance in his direction as I stood and left. By the time I made it back to my desk, a new email had already gone out to the whole company. Effective immediately, Robert Fowler is no longer with the firm. We wish him the best in his future endeavors. I read it twice, just to be sure it was real. Then, finally, I allowed myself a genuine smile. Robert was gone, and I'd come out on top. But honestly, the sweetest part wasn't just the personal win. It was knowing this whole mess sent a message to every arrogant, entitled boss out there. Never underestimate the people you look down on. You might just hand them the keys to your own downfall. Moving forward. The office was eerily quiet after Robert's sudden departure. Sure, people were whispering in the hallways, sharing wide-eyed glances in the break room, but no one dared to speak up too loudly. What happened was just too big, too public. A senior partner had been brought down, not by another high-powered executive, but by me. I sat at my desk, rereading the firm-wide announcement about Robert's termination. His name was gone from every directory. His office was locked. His personal effects already packed and carted away by HR. It was like he'd vanished overnight. You'd think that would be enough closure. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. I pulled out my phone and called my client. He answered right away, sounding almost amused. "Evelyn! I take it you heard the news?" "I did," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Figured I owed you a thank you." He laughed, low and satisfied. "Don't thank me. Robert did this to himself. All you did was give him the rope." I smirked. "Well, I appreciate you handling things in public." Made quite the statement. He paused, then his voice turned thoughtful. "Let me ask you something, Evelyn. Are you actually happy staying where you are?" I blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Let's look at the facts," he said, suddenly sounding all business. "You were the one doing the heavy lifting. You built this account from the ground up. Your firm promoted you because they had no choice, not because they truly valued you. And Robert's downfall? That was your work." I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the truth of his words. "I'll be blunt," he continued. "I never liked your firm. I only stuck around because I wanted to work with you." That caught me off guard. "Oh," he chuckled. "Oh," he repeated, teasing. "So here's the deal. I want you to come work for me." My heart skipped a beat. "You what?" "You've already proven you're sharp, strategic, and you don't let anyone walk all over you. That's the kind of leader I want running my business strategy team. And one more thing." He let the moment stretch out, almost dramatic. "I'll double whatever your current salary is." For a second, I thought I might drop my phone. Double? Not just a small raise. A complete game changer. I swallowed, my mind spinning. "That's a huge offer." He laughed. "It is, but you're worth it." I hesitated. I'd just landed one promotion. Could I really walk away so soon? But then I thought about all those years I'd spent at this company, being undervalued, having my ideas stolen or ignored, watching men like Robert get credit for my work. Even my new title only came about because the firm was forced into it by scandal. Did I really owe them any loyalty? No, I didn't. A slow, confident smile crept onto my face. "Send me the details," I said. "I think I'm ready for something better." The final exit. By the next morning, I'd printed out my resignation letter, signed it, and walked through the office with my head held high. People watched, some shocked, others grinning or nodding in approval. Denise from HR actually looked startled when I handed her the envelope. "You're leaving?" she asked, her eyes wide. I nodded. "Got an offer I couldn't refuse." She scanned the letter and let out a low whistle when she saw the new salary. "Wow," she said, almost under her breath. "I don't blame you." I grinned. It was time. As I packed my things, coworkers stopped by one. Some congratulated me, others just shook their heads in disbelief. A few weren't surprised at all. Just as I was about to walk out for the last time, my phone buzzed with one final message from an unknown number. "Robert Fowler. Enjoy your little victory. You just got lucky." I stared at it for a moment before replying, "Luck had nothing to do with it." And with that, I walked out the door for good. 1 year later. A year later, I stood in my corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. My name was on the door, my team actually respected me, and my salary was more than I ever dreamed of. Best of all, I finally worked somewhere I was truly valued. I glanced at my phone and caught an industry news alert. Former executive Robert Fowler files lawsuit against former firm, claims wrongful termination. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even now, he was still fighting a battle he'd already lost. I set my phone down and leaned back, letting myself enjoy the moment. Robert spent years taking credit, stepping on people, and grabbing at rewards he didn't earn. In the end, he lost it all. I, on the other hand, gained everything I'd ever wanted. And honestly, that was the sweetest revenge I could ever ask for.